AFBF leaders are in Washington this week reviewing the industry's pressing issues, one of which is rural broadband. The Farm Bureau Technology Issues Advisory Committee concluded meetings yesterday revolving around technology and rural America. Joining us now for a recap is California almond and dairy farmer Dino Giacomazzi. Thanks for joining us, Dino. Before we dig into yesterday's event, give us some background on yourself and your operation.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a fourth-generation dairy farmer who's been milking cows and farming continuously in Hanford, California since 1893. My family's farm just turned 125 years old in January, and we've been growing almonds for the last 5 years.
Almonds do well in California. I know it's a big business crop. Talk about how saving water is a huge issue, especially for almond growers. I understand it takes a gallon of water to produce one almond.
Well, that seems to be the media talking point, the gallon per almond. I haven't been able to come up with that math myself, but regardless, water is critical in California. You know, we exist in an irrigated desert, and we get rain in the winter that turns to snow and sticks into the mountains, and then it runs off in the summer, and it doesn't rain much in California anymore. So we need to do what we can to preserve water and to save it for the times when we need it. And one of the solutions is to implement technology in our irrigation systems in order to use just the right amount of water just at the time that our crops need it to be the most efficient users of water that we could possibly be.
Well, that's great, and especially because we are seeing drought develop once again in Southern California. What brings you to Washington this week? Can you give us a recap of yesterday's meetings?
Sure. Today I came to participate with the American Farm Bureau's Issues Advisory Committee on technology, and we talked about a range of issues from rural broadband as a concern to repairing, whether you can self-repair tractors, to issues like blockchain, a whole host of new technologies that are transforming the way farmers farm and do business.
You know, California, it seems like rural access is pretty good, especially because you've got the Silicon Valley. Talk about how this is impacting Californians in particular.
You would think that California would be a much better accessed in terms of broadband in the rural areas, but it's not. Yesterday they showed us a map of where broadband actually reaches around the country, and California in the San Joaquin Valley, where all the food comes from, is basically entirely without broadband for the same reasons that you can't get it in other places like, Kansas and Missouri. And it's that the wire infrastructure for broadband just doesn't exist in rural America. And so we're dependent on wireless technologies, and in some areas are more adaptable to wireless technologies than other, and of course there's costs and expenses. And so in the committee yesterday we talked a lot about some new technologies that are coming available that might spread broadband to the farm in a more economical way, and the real question becomes, how do we get the broadband to the tractor, like to the field level? In many rural areas you can get it to the office through fiber or some other high-speed pipe, but getting it to the tractor where it's really needed becomes the challenge. And so we saw a few new things yesterday one of them was talking about using TV bandwidth, the space in between the TV channels to get broadband out into the field. So there's some really new promising technologies just on the horizon.
Yeah, that's interesting to tap into that spectrum. Really interesting. Really appreciate talking to you as well. An enlightening conversation. Dino Giacomazzi with the American Farm Bureau Technology Issues